joining us. My name is Eric Horn, and I'm Vice President of the Beach Cities Democrats. And I have been hosting our candidate forums for this really crucial year for the South Bay. We are so fortunate to be able to have great candidates in open seats, not just for the state assembly, but also for the state senate. We haven't had 2 open seats in about a decade. And so this is a really amazing opportunity for us to shape the future of the beach cities of the South Bay. And tonight we get to hear from the 2 candidates that advanced to the general election for both the state assembly race, AB 66, and for the state senate race, SD 24. We're going to start with our assembly candidates. We have with us tonight Paul Sao and Sara Deen. Please give them a warm welcome. Thank you both for joining us. I know that it takes a lot to run for office. It takes even more to run for a seat like the state assembly where you're representing almost 500,000 people. And so I think that the first question we'd like to ask you tonight on behalf of the Beach Cities Democrats is what inspired you to run for office? What are some of the issues that you seek to tackle during your term? And what do you think makes you in particular the best candidate for this office? I'm going to go ahead and flip a coin to see who goes first. I want to call heads. I have a coin. Heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. All right, heads. Paul Sao is first. You're going to have 3 minutes for this intro question, and then we will move to doing Q&A questions. I'll have a couple where we'll do 2 minutes. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer. We will rotate who is answering first and who is answering second, because after your 2 minutes, the second person who speaks will also have 2 minutes. Then the first person who speaks, if they should choose to, can address any comments that the other candidate made with 60 seconds. This is optional, but you have the option to do a rebuttal, and we will flip the order each time so that everyone gets a fair chance to answer first and second.
Hello everyone, how's everybody doing? My name is Paul Sao. Thank you for being here. I just want to say thank you to Eric and Beach Cities Den for having us. My journey started out in San Pedro. My parents are Korean immigrants. They came out here from Chicago, Illinois, because my dad had an opportunity to work at Todd Shipyard, which is a Navy facility, a Korean War vet actually gave him an opportunity to work there. So he got a union job as an electrician even though he didn't speak English. He worked there for a while, and that job provided an opportunity for him to become an entrepreneur. So he opened up a store with the severance that he had. Now that store was in Inglewood, and he worked that store for about 36 years, but in the beginning, in the late 80s, Inglewood was not a great place. There's a lot of gang violence. And one day a bullet came through the window, a stray bullet came through the window, hit him in the shoulder, and then ended up in one of our employees' stomachs. And then about 3 years later, the '92 riots happened and burned the store down. So my parents went through a lot of turmoil. Going through that, I asked him, I was like, how did you feel? Because he was about my age when that happened. And he told me, he said, not one elected official or organization came to check up on it. And for that, he said, if you're ever an elected official, give people like me a voice and be someone this country needs. That's why I took it to heart. That's why I went to West Point, served in the U.S. Army. And when I knew, one thing that I knew when I was leaving the Army was I wanted to dedicate myself to public service. That's how I got into becoming a DA and a prosecutor, and now currently the mayor of Rancho Palos Verdes. So I'm a veteran, I'm a prosecutor, and I'm a mayor. And my distinction in this race is that, I've gone through a lot of leadership roles in my life. As a veteran, I had to serve in dire circumstances under extreme stress, building teams, building bridges, making sure my guys stay alive and are prepared to go to war. And when I became a prosecutor, I work for Cal DOJ now. In that current capacity, I'm a corruption prosecutor, so I understand what it means to have transparency, accountability, oversight, right? I also understand the impacts of laws that it has on everyday folks, from witnesses to victims to businesses and across the state. So I understand what it means to implement things. And also I'm fighting for Californians every single day in my day job. My office has sued the Trump administration over 54 times. And for me, being a corruption prosecutor, I understand the shenanigans that's happening in Washington, D.C. and the protection that we need in this state. And lastly, as a mayor, I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing. Right now, the landslide has been taking a toll on the city, but because of that, we created a public safety division to lower crime. And not only that, but also prepare for natural disasters and disaster mitigation. So we've been pushing positive change and results. And the other part I'm super proud of is, in this environment in Trump administration, money is very, very thin. But we are able to carve out $2.3 million through Ted Lieu and Adam Schiff to bring back to the geological hazard abatement district so they can put deep dewatering wells in the ground. We also got approved for over $50 million to do the buyout program so that we can get our folks back on their feet. And the last part too is we were able to secure $11 million from Janice Hahn to bring back to the city. Now that being said, I want to fight for positive change, positive results, and to move with a sense of urgency. I want to take the energy and go to Sacramento and represent you in Sacramento. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
What a gorgeous audience today, truly. Thank you for having us here and gathering us. I'm Sara, Deen. I'm running for the state assembly because, like many of you, I am sick and tired of the same old politics. We need courageous leaders who have demonstrated they're willing to prioritize delivering for the people instead of protecting business as usual. I currently serve as president of the Palos Verdes School Board, elected by and serving voters across all 4 peninsula cities. And through my seat on SCROC in Torrance, I also help set career and technical education policy for 6 South Bay school districts and our broader workforce community. That's already what Sacramento does at the state level, oversees large public budgets and answer to voters across jurisdictions. No one else in this race brings that kind of governing experience. I have kept every single promise made when I ran for school board. And more than that, I have led, improving student learning across the achievement spectrum, increasing our school district rankings, strengthening our suicide prevention program, and adopting the first school safety framework, all while negotiating in good faith with our labor partners, right-sizing our school district without mass layoffs, and keeping a balanced budget when a lot of school districts are underwater. With our local and statewide housing and affordability challenges, we need leaders who will bring opposing sides together, find common ground, and deliver results. That's exactly what I did in leading the passing of Measure SOS in Palos Verdes and across countless other culture wars battles on the school board. That's leadership under pressure with real results. Public education and healthcare make up the majority of our state budget. I'm the only candidate who has spent a career in both worlds, as a dentist, an urgent care owner, and a school board president managing a public budget and a workforce. I don't need briefings to understand these systems, I've lived them. That's why healthcare and education associations across the spectrum, progressive and moderate alike, have endorsed me, from California Teachers Association, the nurses, the medical association, the dental association, not to mention awesome local groups I see here today like Indivisible and South Bay Forward. Last year, California saw its first ever net exodus of business headquarters, and new small business formation is declining statewide. Not a crisis yet, but it demands attention now. My husband and I understand this firsthand. We've gone through permitting, licensing, construction, hiring to set up a small business in Torrance from the ground up. California needs policy that helps small and medium businesses like ours, because when small businesses thrive, they create good jobs and stronger communities. Next year, there will be only 1 doctor left in the entire legislature and only a small handful of small business owner and school board members. I intend to be those voices, because Sacramento decides healthcare, education, and business policy every day without enough people in the room who've actually done any of it. So that's real world experience coupled with courageous and results-driven politics I will bring to Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. You guys are going to make it difficult for the club to pick. Amazing backgrounds, amazing experience that they're bringing to this role. Because we are the Beach Cities Democrats, I want to be able to ask a couple of questions that we've been hearing a lot about in the Beach Cities. I think that what we'll do is I'll ask 2 questions with 2 topics each. You can choose which to address, and then after that we will go ahead and open it up to the audience for the remainder of the hour before we move on to the State Senate. So the first question is, when you think about some of the challenges that communities in Manhattan, Hermosa, Redondo are facing with e-bikes, and with certain businesses being sued for ADA lawsuits by serial litigants, what do you think about addressing some of these challenges that I think are driving our neighbors crazy on the e-bikes issue and really hurting our businesses on the ADA lawsuit side of things? Sara, you will go first, and then Paul.
And you want us to answer both of those, or?
Either or, yes.
Okay. I'll start with e-bikes. Nothing gives me a heart attack more as a mother of a teenage son to see those kids careening on the e-bikes doing the papa wheelies. And that's why in Palos Verdes we moved to pass an e-bike policy in our district. We actually followed the model set by Hermosa Beach and the police department and the school district here. But it's not enough. We right now have a patchwork. There are some school districts that have adopted programs like ours. So we require kids from 5th grade through up can bring an e-bike, but they have to get a little sticker. They have to take an e-bike safety course, but not every school district has done it. And so we have a patchwork. I think the right approach is we need some consistency across the state, but we need to let each area kind of decide what makes sense for their own community. So what the state did a couple years ago is they passed a bill saying every school district needs to pass a cell phone policy. They didn't tell us exactly what the policy needs to be. There's a lot of, this is a field that's ever changing and every family has different needs. I want to mention, I have friends that are single moms who rely on e-bikes for their kids to get back and forth from school. So even though I find them terrifying and a nuisance, I understand they're necessary for other families. So at any rate, a state bill that would direct school districts, not exactly what the guidelines should look like, but to do an analysis and to come up with something over the next couple of years so that we are thinking about it across our state. So I'll say that to the e-bike. Do I still have time to do the ADA?
You do.
Okay, so I participate with the Torrance Chamber and I have several friends that own restaurants in the area. By the way, the trial lawyers did not endorse me, so I can speak freely on this topic. Yes, and the dilemma is those of us that are running small businesses, now let me say, it is very important that small businesses are accessible to our folks that need that support. At the same time, these small businesses are especially being targeted right now. And the smaller your family's restaurant is, you don't have the financial capability to make the corrections. Sometimes you don't even know how to make the corrections. So I have friends who are immigrants who then are like, hey, I want to do the right thing. They don't know what they need to do. They don't know how to get it done. They don't have those supports. And the next thing you know, the county's coming back around to say, you still didn't do it, we're dinging you again. Sorry.
Thank you, Sara.
All right, so it's funny that we're mentioning this topic as Todd and I back there. We just talked about right before this session started, but as I came down from my house, 4 kids were on bikes popping a wheelie. And a lot of folks almost hit them. The interesting part too is for us, at least on the peninsula, the person and the people who wrote the ordinance for the peninsula was on my city council. We actually got together because it was a huge issue. Now, I sit on a public safety committee for the entire peninsula with other cities, and what we did was we made sure that we educated folks. The biggest part was education, the enforcement, and the leadership behind it. You need the leadership to say, hey, we need to educate people first, because you just can't cut tickets and send it to parents and be like, hey, your kid is popping wheelies, right? We need to make sure they're safe. So we worked with LASD to make sure they're informative programs and actual sessions to make sure they write it correctly with helmets instead of the World War II, hanging off your helmet and head kind of thing and writing 3 per. So what we did is make sure that education was there with LASD. The other part too was the enforcement. We told everyone, hey, once education is done, we need to enforce, because if you have laws and you don't enforce it, it doesn't matter, right? And the last part is leadership. Having the city councils on the peninsula enforce it, talking about it with their communities, making sure the message is clear so that everybody's doing the right thing. That's how we approach it, and we wrote the law for it. Now, when it comes to ADA lawsuits, it's very personal to me because my family's been sued, and I've helped tons of other folks, because being in a position as an attorney and a prosecutor, everybody and their mom wants to come and ask me for advice in terms of for issues, right? We got sued for $250,000 on a liquor store. There was a frivolous lawsuit. Now, the interesting thing is this. There's about 5 shops in the state that do it, and they do that consistently, targeting small businesses and immigrant communities because they know that they can't fight back. They're not a big corporation, right? And if you don't have the money, you settle. So they keep on doing it and they keep on pulling out, and it's terrible. It's not a good way to do business. And the reason I mention all this is because there's always bad actors in legislative issues, right? There's always bad actors, but you can do things with a scalpel and make sure you do it correctly so that you eliminate bad actors. And I know what it means to legislate correctly, and the second, third order effects of writing those laws. So you don't have to use a sledgehammer, you can do it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Paul. Any rebuttals or direct responses?
Just that it's PVP USD is the school district for Palos Verdes, not LAUSD.
Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Another challenge that we've been having here in Hermosa, and I'm going to take the privilege to ask a question for Hermosa because it's of great interest to this town that we're in currently, is that we have decaying infrastructure, particularly the municipal pier that everybody knows. It's iconic. It's a huge part of our town's history. It's part of who we are. We got an engineering assessment saying that it is really degraded and will require either millions, tens of millions of dollars to continue to repair it, or possibly even replacement in the long run. Now, as we think about long-term effects of climate change and escalating storms and the pressure on our coastal infrastructure, what do you think that we can do to partner with the state to address some of these challenges, both here in Hermosa, but also for coastal infrastructure across the beach cities? We'll start with Paul.
So I know about a little bit about landslides and natural disasters right now. So the biggest thing is this, is making sure you have the relationship. So we've been working with 15, 16 other cities statewide to make sure that we build a coalition, we build a team to make sure we get the money back and the resources back to put preventive maintenance in place. So right now, Cal OES, let me put it this way, I've been going to Sacramento and Washington DC tremendously and a lot because we're trying to get resources for our city in the landslide, but that money is not there. We were able to carve that out to fix the solution or fix a problem that we had and implement the solution that we have. Now, when it comes to those natural disasters, the most important thing is this. We need to put the word landslide into legislation, which we helped draft. We passed it through the Assembly and the State Senate. It got vetoed on the governor's desk, but we're trying to do that again with Al Marsucci and Ben Allen. So we've been working on legislation to do that. So we're proactively trying to fix the problem. We need to make sure those resources get to those communities because we need to do preventive maintenance and not put Band-Aids on things that need long-term fixes. So I've been steeped in that issue. One thing that I realized is you need partners, you need to build those relationships, you need actual relationships in Sacramento to actually get those bills passed. And if you don't have it, you don't have those friends, it's really hard to get anything done in Sacramento. So for me, I've been building those relationships not only with assembly members, but also with Cal OES and FEMA, and you name it in the organization. So I've been trying to pull those levers so we can bring that money back. Fortunately for us, as a city in Rancho Palos Verdes, in the landslide, we've been able to do that. We've been able to get the money back to actually fix the problem. So we have a solution, but now we have to provide it in perpetuity. So my plan is to go to Sacramento, make sure that legislation passes, and we continue to address it and be proactive and provide leadership on that topic.
Nobody knows crumbling infrastructure as much as a California school board member. Have you seen our schools? When I was elected, it was the top of mind priority for our community. I knew it was not going to be an easy answer. California assumes that communities will pass local school bond measures to fund their infrastructure repairs. I serve in a fiscally conservative community and people said that is going to be impossible to get done. So there were a couple things that needed to happen at the same time. One, it was getting started on this project from day one, taking meetings from the beginning. I met with Al Marsucci and the person who consulted on the Torrance school bond measure to go, how do I even get my community to start thinking about this? This was a year and a half before public discussions had even begun, because this was new for me. I needed to understand, what does the process look like? How do I deliver this for our community? Then it required meeting with the people that had tanked the previous school bond measure. How do we get you on board? How do we get your buy-in? And then the other piece, which I think is really important, especially this year when Californians are facing new ballot measures with tax increases. You can't ask people to pay more in taxes till you've made your case that you're spending their dollars well. So it required cleaning up our budget, being able to communicate that to the public, telling the public, I'm gonna go to the state first. So I went to the state and I sought out, there's bonds there that we could use, there were dollars there we could use to fund some of our HVAC repairs and some of our facilities. So I tapped out what I could from the state first, then moved to the federal government. Ted Lieu's office helped us apply for a $2.8 million grant. We got approved for $2 million. And so we had done these things and then we came back to the public and said, look, this is where we are. If we do not invest in these schools, we're going to have to shut down sites. And so we're coming to you today after we've cleaned up all of our funds. We've communicated with you how we're spending every single dollar. We're telling you we don't have what we need. We've gone to the state, we've gone to the feds. Only now am I coming to you with this request. So I think that shows long-term planning to deliver really big results, and infrastructure takes that.
Thank you. Any rebuttals or?
Just to add on that. I think the most important part, especially in our district, is that there's a lot of senior citizens on fixed incomes. And a lot of folks can't pay for it because the debt and bonds from before are already still exist under property tax structure. So for us, we didn't do that, and we actually went and got grants instead of debt, because 30 years ago, they passed the bond and still paying for it. And cost of living is already high. And I already got so many complaints about it because they're like, you're saddling us with more debt. So the reason why we sought these grants was to make sure that we don't increase the cost of living and the price tag for people to pay in the city, and make sure their cost of living goes down. And so for us as leaders, I think it's very important to understand that. And when you go after money, you get money that doesn't have strings attached to it, so you can spend it to actually improve the quality of life for the people that you're working for.
Appreciate that. Just use the moderator's privilege, 10 seconds. Do you think that we can count on you in Hermosa Beach to support us when we're needing grant money, new infrastructure for
100%.
100%?
You got it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We're on the record.
It's on the video.
Thank you.
So Hermosa wins regardless of who
Thank you.
gets elected.
Yes, thank you.
You have it.
Well, with that, this is about the members. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A, so we're going to take the next 20 minutes to do questions from the audience. We're just going to randomly call on folks, and if you could make your questions brief, so that we have the opportunity to answer as many as possible. One other thing is, I know there's friends of the campaigns, both sides in this room. My request is that your questions not be directed at any one candidate, but at both of them. So, I don't want to see questions about the color of Paul's tie, for instance, or anything like that.
I don't mind telling my team, like my volunteers, that they don't need to ask questions. So
Okay.
You can do that too. You can
Okay.
ask her.
No,
I'm
thank
okay
you.
with that. I don't know.
There's no planting question.
Well, I'll be calling on people anyway, so. Thank you.
I didn't hear what Sara said, but also, we do not have to use up all of our time on Q&A.
Absolutely.
But, okay, questions? All right, this mic, you have to have this one.
Can you hear me? Okay. Paul, thanks for being here. And as I was introduced earlier, I serve as the privilege of serving as board president of the best school district in South Bay. Without reaching
Come on.
However,
He said it.
this the problem that Sara shares with me, with other schools around here. We're dying for money. We understand why the laws were written, the way they were written decades ago, to promote everybody so we can all raise time together for all the children in the state. However, our district, Manhattan, Hermosa, without El Segundo, PV, are just about the lowest funded school district in the entire state. As you know, it is very, very high cost of living here. In order for us to attract great teachers to get there, it is just unbelievable how difficult it is to run this. Start excellent school districts. We need your help. Whomever wins, I know Brian and John's here as well. We need your help fixing this problem with Prop 13, Prop 98, LCFF. I don't have an answer, but we hope that you will do that, and we'd love to hear what you can do today. You can share with us. Thank you.
Sure. We absolutely need to raise the base rate of the LCFF. So that is the number of dollars we get for every single student. Redondo Beach and Palos Verdes and Manhattan Beach are drastically underfunded because we have low concentrations of English language learners, kids on free and reduced lunch, and kids that are struggling. So we end up getting less money overall to spend. Raising the base rate has been shown to be the only way to effectively raise the tide for all ships. So that absolutely needs to happen. This year, Governor Newsom did increase significantly our funding for special education, which I'm really excited about, and hopefully that will translate into good results this next year, make it easier to take care of our kids that have IEPs. So those things absolutely need to happen. I think the other piece of it, as a school district, my constituents, they know how to find me. They hold me accountable for every dollar, and I have to demonstrate that the dollars spent produce results. The state isn't held to the same level of accountability. And so I do support the bill package proposed by CSBA that creates that same mechanism of accountability. Is the state really doing their job in supporting us as a local school district? I would say no, they're not held accountable. They don't have to demonstrate that they're closing the learning gap. You're required as a school board member to demonstrate that you're improving, closing that learning gap when we do our LCAP accountability. Nobody's asking the state the same question. So I think that will also be helpful to make sure that programs that we are rolling out are evidence-based. Unfortunately, sometimes there are programs that are pushed in the state that are ideological and they don't actually have anything to do with improving student outcomes. So that's another place that I would like to see us move into.
Ultimately, what it comes down to is money. And every issue that we see in the state of California comes down to money and spending. And the one thing that I realized advocating and going up to Sacramento and going to DC so many times because of landslide is who you know and the relationships that you build. And right now, going back and forth, I realize what levers I need to pull and how to get that money. And I think when it comes down to whatever topic it is, from infrastructure to emergency management to public safety to education funding, all of it requires you to understand how things work. And because I built those relationships, I know which levers to pull, and that's why we got the money we did in our city. And assigning people that have the expertise to go get it and to find it. And for us, what we started doing was making sure we planted the seeds early, got the grants, got the experts to write those grants to make sure we get that money quickly and early, and persuading enough people on your team to actually fund it. And I think a big part of that is making sure that we have to fight against other school districts, because I hate to say we have an affluent school district, right? And my friends in other school districts will say, hey, you guys have enough, you guys have an education foundation, so why do you need that money? But if you have friends and you can actually persuade them, say, hey, our infrastructure is complete trash right now and we need that money, you can persuade them to do it. So pulling those levers and understanding how to get that money is very important. And I think I bring that expertise to the table, and hopefully I can advocate and champion education needs in our district.
Response, yeah.
It's not a rebuttal, it's just an ad. When we shifted to the current model of school funding, the idea was to shift from categorical funding, where the state would give you X dollars for PE, X dollars for science, X dollars for this. We said, give us the money, we'll decide how to use it. As enrollment has been declining across the state, we get funded by enrollment and attendance. So across the state, as enrollment is declining, the state is doling out less money as part of that disbursement. So they have dollars that they are now redistributing into creating new special grants. We don't want that. Stop giving us dollars that are tied to specific programs and increase that base grant, because that honors the true vision of the LCFF model. So I just wanted to add that point. It was a nerdy point.
Oh, are you good, Colin? You can start without the mic if you've got a loud voice.
Thank you for doing this thing together. Somebody asked again for the old people, seniors, and those with disabilities, and so that is my primary advocacy work that I do. So a couple questions, but I'll pick one. Housing and aging in place. We have a shortage of affordable, accessible housing for older adults. How will you use state funds or incentives to help seniors age safely in their own homes and communities? Give me a specific plan. Thank you.
Okay. So first I want to start off with SEIU has endorsed me, and those guys do long-term care, and they understand the senior situation. I understand it because I'm personally going through it now, because we're in the sandwich generation and we have to take care of our parents. And the biggest thing that I see and the trouble that we see in Sacramento is that it's not visible. It's not visible. People don't understand it, and the cost of it is so high. So the biggest thing that I wanted to do is work with SEIU to make sure that we advocate zealously to get the funding, long-term care funding, and also for the housing that's available to make sure that we fund every aspect of that, what you just talked about. And for me, what I don't see in Sacramento is the leadership on it, and that's where we're trying to flag it to make sure that comes to fruition, and that's why they're lobbying Governor Newsom so hard in the past bill to actually get those funding carved out so we can actually address the situation. Everybody else right now is focused on other health needs, and it's a viable need, but at the same time, a lot of that is not coming to fruition because there aren't voices in Sacramento representing and championing for that. And I think that's something that's it's slowly creeping its head up, and it's getting stronger and stronger. And I think SCIU as a group endorsing because they know I can get the job done and and build the relationships and provide the leadership on it to bring the funding for it and eventually build the facilities and agencies that we need to take care of that solution or that problem.
Great question. I think it's absolutely gutting. I know, especially when I was knocking doors on Hawthorne Boulevard, that corridor where you'll see a tiny home from the 1950s and 40s sandwiched between businesses, and you ask those folks that are living in there how they're doing, and they tell you, the most common thing I heard was, I have a broken window and I can't afford to get the glass repaired. Glass repair is actually quite expensive. There was a time where we were doing a better job of funding at the county and the state and the federal level programs that allow seniors to make those repairs to their homes so they can put them on the market. So I would first want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to fund those programs to help seniors fix up their homes, put them on the market so that they can move then into a home that's the size that they're looking for and has the supports that they need. That was something I just kept coming across when I was knocking on doors. But housing is really important. It is a crisis in the state. I think one of the challenges that we see is there's a lot of unserious conversations around housing. You'll hear local leaders say, yes, I know we need housing, I want to build local housing, but the state's not helping me do it the right way. The state legislators will say, we know there's a housing crisis, but the city councils are not really meaningfully working on it. And there's no one meaningfully bringing the two sides together to have really honest conversations, especially when there's a project coming up on a city council agenda. And so that's the kind of leadership I would like to bring, is bring those sides of the conversation together to have really honest conversations about what kind of development we want to see and what we don't want to see. Because I think most people agree we need more affordable housing. I know my teachers can't afford to live in the district anymore. Most of my classified staff is working 3 jobs, which is inhumane. You brought up the question about the seniors, that's in that same category. At the same time, we understand Rolling Hills can't be Torrance, Torrance can't be downtown LA, but I haven't seen those conversations happen. I've attended housing forums with like pro-housing groups or the folks that are worried about their neighborhoods changing, but I haven't seen the two sides come together.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Eric, did you want something?
Along that line, one of the issues around here specifically is military housing. We have the LA Air Force Base here. It is a primary employer for the region, but an economic necessity for the region. It produces about over $5 billion for the region. What will you do at the state to help the housing crisis specifically for military families and keep them here?
Sara first.
Great question, thank you. Workforce housing is actually a place where I think we can we can create consensus for it, and specifically housing for our military personnel. Now, I haven't pursued specifically housing for military personnel, but I have for educators. So I attended a workshop California School Board Association put on how to pursue education workforce housing, but it kind of talked about what tools we have right now in terms of legislation and policy as a state that we can tap into to create those kind of housing projects. It's not there yet. There's some ideas there, but nothing's really been there. It's not workable. I know my district would not be able to, there's no funding for us to pursue it. So I think that is an area where we need to start connecting the dots, is how to create statewide a legislative framework and the funding to go with it to support workforce housing. And I think it's a really good opportunity in the South Bay. It would be much easier to bring together people on opposite sides of the housing issue.
No, let me, just to answer that question specifically, that specific question for military housing and the members that live here that are part of this armed services is very near and dear to me, because a lot of veterans are homeless. A lot of veterans need housing. The biggest part is this: we have to partner with our federal government to make sure that we get those funds to bring it back, because the state is not going to do it, especially for federal housing. There's Fort MacArthur in San Pedro, and there's housing there, but we need a lot more for folks that are veterans and military members, and that especially is needed. The biggest thing to make sure we close that gap is the federal relationship, right? We need to go to DOW now, not DOD, to make sure we get those grants. And there are grants that exist, and a lot of state members and legislative policy members don't know about it because they don't have those relationships. I want to make sure I bridge that with Ted Lieu and Adam Schiff, and make sure that we can actually provide those funds in the housing and the visibility, because the key thing about a lot of legislative and policy making is visibility, right? And the leadership behind it, because people don't know. How many of you in this room didn't know about it, right? A lot of folks didn't. So it's flagging it first and making sure we get those relationships in place to actually fund the actual solution itself.
Anything else?
How do we square the state laws, which are in effect, which are mandating more and more housing here in these two cities? And we have, as you know, no land to put them on. That is, the state mandated numbers of units are not being built and probably can't be built. And therefore, we get the high rise and we get the neighbor fighting that. That's the state law, that's not gonna change. You're not gonna go change the law that mandates these housing plans, are you? There's no way in the world the state's gonna go backwards, is there, and require less housing here in the South Bay?
So I know that very, very well. We got our housing element approved, and with my help, we've approved it in about 6 months. So I deal with that all the time, every day these days, especially with how SB 9 project, SB 79 came up, a lot of them. And in my campaign, we knocked close to 40,000 doors. And every single time I go to beach cities, it's all about local control. And how do we keep the character, how do we keep local control, how do we keep Sacramento from mandating housing units and stuff? This is my fix to the whole situation. Right now, listen, I'll use my city as an example. Sacramento does not know Rancho Palos Verdes because they saddled us with, I think, 647 units that we have to build, right? If you look at my city, half the city is a preserve or it's in a high fire zone, or it's in the landslide area. And there's 2 ingress, egress zones or roads into the city itself. It's impossible. It's like Palisades, right? You just create a disaster. Now, if you look at that, and as a legislator and policymaker, you have to understand the region that you want these housing units to be built. Now, instead of saying cities and saddling cities with a certain number, my fix and my solution to it is approach it from a regional standpoint, right? And so I know somebody, when I knocked on doors, said, hey, why don't you guys make it like cap and trade, right? Because I know, for my understanding is Carson, Hawthorne, Inglewood want to build. They're part of the South Bay region. Give them the incentives to actually build, right? Make incentives. I'm more of a carrot guy than a stick guy when it comes to having people do things that you want them to do. And for me, a lot of complaints that I see is because of mandates, people don't want to do it. Nobody wants to be opposed to the statutes, but when you get it jammed down your throat, it pisses everybody off, right? So the ultimate fix, in my opinion, is making sure that you incentivize these cities to build, approach it from a regional standpoint tied to transportation, and make sure you put it in areas that's smart, pragmatic, looking 10, 20, 30 years from now. Now, when it comes to the statutes themselves, we have to follow the law, or else my office, the AG's office, will come after you for endorsement, and there's some cities that do it. But ultimately, we need to be smart and pragmatic about how we plan, and then especially having those conversations with housing up in Sacramento.
This is an area where we're gonna be in complete agreement. Senator Allen actually, I think, was the one that introduced that bill that would allow for regional sharing of RENA credits, to what Paul was saying, where cities in the South Bay or in a region could share their RENA credits, the housing burden that they have to produce, which would make more sense. It takes in the South Bay's limitations that were brought up, for example. I think the way the bill ended up passing is that regional sharing is only gonna apply to fire-affected areas. And so I hope that there's room there to broaden that and allow more, that should be a statewide. It seems a really good idea. I would be interested in hearing what the contrary arguments are, but I think that's an area where we actually agree.
Okay.
There's probably a lot of areas like that.
Thank you. That's good.
Oh.
You, anything
It's okay agreeing.
Somebody's hand go up first. Do we have a mic we could run over?
That's okay, I can have a loud voice. I'm April, and I just had two questions. One is, no, it's my fault. So my name's April. I have two questions, separate ideas, separate topics. One is, my husband.
There we go, there we go.
Can you hear me? Is that
Yeah.
better? It's gotta be really close. April, okay. My husband was bicycling close to our home, and was run over by an e-bike who left bleeding on the snow. And so we have had a lot of discussion about what would help this. And one of the things would be, should e-bikes be required to be insured by their parents? And the second thing is, should they have licenses so we can report them? That would be useful. And the other question, that's completely separate, is, well, I'll just say someone I know, has a business that also has the ADA challenge, but and I understand it, but many people here may not understand what you're talking about. So maybe you should.
Okay, so on the e-bike issue, several things pop into mind. I would love to see us actually fulfill our commitment for those protected bike lanes and complete that plan for the South Bay. That would help us a lot. Two, looking at this e-bike issue, I think the area where we need to target also is the manufacturers. As a parent, my kid came to me and said, I want a Suron. I had no idea what the heck that was. All of his friends had one, and I had absolutely no idea. It turns out the Suron isn't even street legal. It's sold for dirt, like it's not, you're not allowed to use it on the road, and yet it's being sold. So I think there is some piece where we need to go more upstream in our legislative, putting in that stick piece of it, right, the carrot and stick, that we need to start working with the manufacturers and seeing who are they selling these bikes to and what are they intended for. So there's that piece there. I absolutely agree with you. We're still in the beginning phases, like I said, around figuring out what is a reasonable burden for families. The e-bikes are expensive themselves. A lot of families are depending on them for transporting their children because they are working and they can't transport their kids, and I understand that. But I absolutely agree with you. There was a bill, I think it was an Al Martucci bill actually, around dealing with e-bikes to the way we deal with motorcycles, or bringing the insurance and the licensing for them in line with that. So I would like to see that through, making sure it's not overly burdensome. We of course don't want to discourage people from riding bikes. So I would like to see that through, and I know that there has been efforts I don't remember off the top of my head what happened with those bills. ADA. So the point April was making was that there are law firms that go around and they target small businesses. They've been targeting them in two ways. One is the ADA complaints, and the other one is they go to restaurants specifically and pull up their websites and say your website is not accessible for people that are either hard of hearing or visually impaired. And so now all these small businesses, again, a small business does not have the wherewithal to, sorry? Oh, okay. So at the very least, working with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that these small businesses have the supports, and then preventing these nuisance lawsuits, I would be all on board for that. We need to protect people, but not when it's being manipulated.
Yeah, I'll start with that specific one, the ADA issue. It's basically frivolous lawsuits and these opportunistic attorneys that are going after immigrant communities, small businesses, restaurants, and basically making a buck because they know the complaints that come in, or they get sued, right? And it'll be for a huge amount. And then the small business owner freaks out because they can't afford that. So when that amount gets negotiated down with an attorney, it ends up being $20,000 or $15,000. That's a huge hit for a small business. And I've seen that over and over and over again. Now we can legislate for bad actors. Now, that ADA compliance rule, it needs to be upheld because of the population itself, but we can't go so far to actually eliminate the whole process, right? We need to make sure that that structure stays in place because it protects a certain class of people. But at the same time, bad actors, that's what you legislate for. And I think I have experience in doing that. And the major thing in regards to that is that we need to make sure we use a scalpel and not a sledgehammer when we're making legislation. And now that leads me into the point of e-bikes. E-bikes are a very good tool for a lot of families because they can't drop off. And I know they're expensive and they're dangerous. And we literally, Todd and I just had a whole conversation about e-bikes and getting hurt. We need to make sure we have smart legislation about how we do it. I'm open to all and everything in terms of weighing the options to make sure we make the smart decisions that we need to So we use a scalpel, like I was saying, to do the legislation so it doesn't hurt people, and then people can still utilize it responsibly, but at the same time we affect and we keep accountable the folks that are misusing those e-bikes. And I think the smartest thing to do is make sure we actually think about the second, third order effects of what we're doing. And I think a lot of, I hate to say Sacramento, but a lot of policy making these days need to have a little more thought to it.
Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes, you may.
One of the things, we can learn from other states too. This has to do with the regulatory environment. So in Texas, the legislature only meets every 2 years. That means lawmakers are only passing laws every 2 years. In California, legislators get up there and they want to have their name on a million bills. And we end up with this regulatory environment that doesn't protect consumers and is overly burdensome on business owners. There is now, I think, a task force that the Speaker of the Assembly is thinking about or has initiated to create a periodic review. Texas does it. Texas cleans up their regulations regularly to see if they're out of date. We do not actually do that in the state of California. I did not realize that till like last year, because our own small business was the subject of this environment. So I would like to see us do that too. Maybe we can pass fewer bills and clean up what we have first. Might be a good place to start.
Thank you. And with that, let's do 60-second closing statements. First Paul, and then Sara.
Thank you guys very much for coming out here. You could do so many other things, especially tonight, and then you guys came to see two candidates running for state assembly. I think the only people that really care about us running are ourselves sometimes.
And our parents.
And the parents.
We care.
But that's, my fundraiser says the same thing. When we approach a deadline, we're pulling out our hair, and she says the only two people in the world that care about this fundraising deadline is you and me, right? So I just want to say thank you guys for coming out here. The last part is this. We need folks in Sacramento who understand leadership, who understand real results, who understand the urgency of the problems that we have, and have been fixing those problems that we had in the South Bay. We need people who understand how to do it, drive positive results, and do it with a sense of urgency. I think the experiences that I have being a veteran, of being a prosecutor, being a mayor, have informed my decision making, and the pressure cooker that's going to be Sacramento. And I understand how to pull the levers that we need to pull to get the real resources back to our district. And I've been doing that for so long. Going to DC, going to Sacramento, I realized you need allies, you need relationships. And that's why I have over 100 endorsements from folks, from elected officials to grassroots supporters, and everybody in this room that I care about. Now, the last thing that I want to tell is that, for us going forward, we need to make sure that we have people who care about this district. I grew up here. I grew up in 4 of the cities. I care about my family and friends are here, so I want to make sure that we take care of them, improve the quality of life for the folks that we have, and do it with zest and advocacy. So thank you very much for giving me the time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much to the organizers and everybody for coming out here today. This race really isn't about ideology, it's a choice between rewarding insider politics or delivering results families are promised and actually improving people's lives. The South Bay is dealing with very real problems: rising cost of living, traffic, small businesses struggling, healthcare that's out of reach. Those problems actually don't get solved by insider politics and name dropping. They get solved by people who leaders who put people first, who work across party lines and across cities to get things done. I have a clear record of getting that done. Getting elected in a purple district and delivering on every single campaign promise on my newspaper ads. Despite $2.5 million in attacks from the utility and insurance companies, this campaign is stronger than ever because people are ready for leadership focused on results and not politics as usual. There is a place in our movement for every single one of you, for anyone who believes we can and must do better. Please join us. Thank you.
Join me in a round of applause for Paul Sayo and Sara Deen.
A quick thing that Eric doesn't even know about, but while we're transitioning to our Senate candidates, there is a Senate candidate in the room who'd like to speak for 60 seconds.
I was gonna
Chris.
ask.
There you go.
Thank you so much. What's going on, Beach City Democrats? I'm Chris Duncan. I'm also from Beach City, as you can tell. San Clemente, all the way down in Orange County. As we're getting transitioned to the state Senate candidates, I'm running for State Senate District 36. It's Orange County, a little bit of LA County. And I'm running against the most MAGA state senator in the entire California legislature, a guy named Tony Strickland. A guy who just recently voted in the state senate to allow Trump to run for a third term. Right, so this is a really important race. A lot of you have walked down there for me and Dara Tran, by the way, and Congressman Robert Garcia. Just give a little tidbit. I was in Homeland Security, I was a prosecutor, and I resigned instead of following a direct order from Stephen Miller to separate children from their parents. Remember the child separation policy? Resigned, gave up my career for those kids, and I got elected down to San Quentin as the first Democrat ever. So we want to flip that district. We had a chance to do it with Congressman Garcia and Tran. If you want to help me, I got my cards at the front table. Would love your help walking down there in those districts. We're running against Republicans down now, so we do it in Orange County. Would love your support. Thank you. Okay, Chris Duncan, Senate District 36. Vote ChrisDuncan.com. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to have our Senate candidates now. Please, everyone. Get ready. Here we go. Eric, take a break.
No, yes.
He's gonna make a. You didn't see this. They had to wrestle earlier.
Oh, okay.
Ugh. Do you need a sword? No.
No, we're good. We're good. Reiterating, going, making things up as we go. Navy.
All right, everybody, if everyone would please make their way back to their seats. We're going to proceed with part 2 of the function. If I can please have everybody back to their seats. Well, thank you again to Paul Seo and Sara Deen for a fabulous conversation. It's very educational. Tonight we have with us Brian Goldsmith and John Erickson, two amazing candidates for the state senate for SD 24. This is a district that goes all the way from Palos Verdes to Malibu and indoors and inland. And so these guys were going to be representing almost 1 million constituents, more than a congressman actually. And so the first question that I want to ask you tonight is, why are you doing this? Why would you put yourself through this? Tell the club about your priorities, and if you could specifically, tell us a little bit about your priorities for the new cities. And let's flip a coin to see who goes first.
You have heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads.
Tails.
All right, John is first.
Wonderful.
Hi everyone, it's great to see you all. I want to first apologize for terrorizing your screens in the early primary. You probably saw me more than you care to, also in your mailboxes. This is my natural hair color, so I'm sorry they made me really gay in a lot of those videos and photos, so apologies. But I'm John Erickson, I'm a council member in the city of West Hollywood, as well as an individual who's worked for over 15 years across this region. I'm the president of California Contract Cities, which my friends down here in the beach cities are a part of as well, so I'm very intimately involved with a lot of the issues. But I've been working on social justice and local politics for a number of years. Whether that was actually starting as an intern in the city council offices in West Hollywood when I was finishing my PhD, which I got from the Claremont colleges, or both of my master's degrees as well, or then working at Planned Parenthood for the last 8 years as a vice president, or specifically most recently as the chief of staff at a Latino advocacy organization that helps families impacted by ICE and the wildfires, and specifically most recently the Ladera fire over there in Laurel Heights, and providing assistance. I'm running for this seat because I'm probably a little crazy right now. I mean, we're all running for politics, but we all want to bring about a lot of change. And I think it's that change that we see right now with people not being able to afford the rents, people's grocery bills going higher, not being able to build enough housing, senior, military, you name it. And the issue of who has the right experience to take probable solutions and practical policy meeting up to Sacramento. I've actually already passed a number of bills in Sacramento as an elected leader in West Hollywood, whether that was helping seniors and those with disabilities move from an upper unit to a lower unit and keep their same rents, or ensuring that the nation's first multi-stall gender-neutral bathroom bill was passed unanimously by the state and the assembly at a time when you would think that those politics would never actually occur. But at the end of the day, I'm running because I want to be your fighter. I want to be a person who I've always been, elbows out, and I want to ensure that you know when I'm up in Sacramento, I've got your back. Whether that's the work I've already done, making sure my city is fiscally sound through not only COVID, or when I was mayor and my city had a $31 million budget budget surplus, and we still continue to push progressive policies as well as aspects of practical business policies and making sure that we're doing all we can to build housing. These are the real life experiences I bring to this race, practical experience, and also a large coalition of individuals. I'm endorsed by the LA County Labor Federation, the California Federation of Labor, SCIU, AFSCME, consumer attorneys. I know that's a trigger word maybe sometimes. But additionally, all the transportation groups, all the housing groups, as well as countless local elected and countywide and statewide officials. Most recently, I'm really proud to announce that Senator Weber Pearson has endorsed, the only doctor, actually, one of the few doctors left in the state legislature, and how important that type of work is. Because at the end of the day, we need people who are up there who are going to be making sure they're getting down to business on the first day and ensuring that they're getting down to business on behalf of all of you. And it's great to be here.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time. I mean, whoever wins this seat that John and I are running for has very big shoes to fill, because I think Senator Ben Allen has done a great job for the South Bay and for this district for the last 12 years. I was really honored to have his support and his vote in our party process that wrapped up today. I was honored to get the most votes in our race, and I'm honored as well to have the support of 3 of the competitors, our fellow candidates who were running against us over the last 14 months. Ellen Evans, Mike Newhouse, and a local favorite, Eric Alegria, have all endorsed, appreciate Eric's fan back there, have all endorsed our campaign, in addition to many dozens of local elected officials from the top of Westlake Village and the Conejo Valley to the bottom of Palos Verdes in the South Bay. This is indeed a vast and varied district. So for those of you who are just getting to know me, I think there are a few things that you ought to know. I've always been very engaged in politics and policy, but originally as a journalist. I was covering these issues at places like CNN and The Atlantic and CBS News, and it was in those jobs that I learned how to ask the hard questions and hold people in power accountable. When Trump became president, I decided it wasn't good enough anymore just to cover politics. I actually needed to jump into the arena and try in whatever small ways I could to change politics. And that started with my work for the presidential campaign of my friend Pete Buttigieg, and it continued with my work for a lot of House Democrats all across America. And that's where I got to know Speaker Pelosi, less as an icon, more as a political leader, and I'm deeply honored to have her support in this campaign as well. As everybody knows, we're in a critical moment right now in California. We've got 2 huge challenges before us. One is we have a president of the United States who has weaponized the federal government like never before to hurt our state, our medical research, our environmental protection, our women's rights, our LGBTQ community, and so much else. And at the same time, let's be honest, our state has not done a good enough job delivering results and outcomes for our people to match our strong progressive values and our good intentions. We're spending way more money than ever before, but we're not necessarily seeing the results in our neighborhoods and in our communities. I read on the front page of the LA Times a couple of months ago that only 16% of the kids in LA County who qualify for subsidized childcare are given a slot. That means that 84% are on their own. And as a working parent myself, you know, who's privileged enough to be able to afford good childcare for my kids. Oh, sorry, more to be continued.
Indeed, we will.
Yes.
Thank you both. Thank you for sharing your passion for this and your backgrounds. We're gonna go through some of the similar questions that we had with the assembly candidates, and so I hope that you guys have had the chance to study for the test a little bit.
Took notes. Thanks.
The first question is just a repeat. We have had a really challenging situation here in the South Bay. I'm sure all over the state with our businesses, local favorites like Sharky's, a million different businesses being hit by these 88 lawsuits. They're not given the chance to actually correct their facilities, and they're getting hit with fines at a time in which many of our local businesses are really struggling.
We'd love to hear your views on, to get more specific, how do you feel about balancing the needs to protect disadvantaged communities, disabled folks, and actually making sure that these businesses can correct their violations before being fined? That's number one. Number two is, how do you plan to tackle some of the challenges, safety issues, licensing, insurance on the e-bike challenges that we've had here in the South Bay? Start with Brian.
Well, thanks, Eric. I think the word you used is the right one, which is balance. We have to strike a balance between protecting our disabled community, protecting the right of consumers to seek redress for grievances and abuse. But at the same time, you know, I know as someone who started and ran 3 small businesses, these businesses are often hanging on by a thread. It is really hard. And so there are a lot of things that are kind of created or cooked up in a lab in Sacramento that may sound good up there, and there aren't enough people up there asking the hard questions about, what does this actually mean for folks and communities on the ground? What are the costs and consequences, sometimes unintended consequences, of well-meaning laws? What is this burden gonna look like for the restaurant or the dry cleaner or the small accounting firm or the small law firm that's just barely hanging on? And that begins with providing small businesses the opportunity to make corrections within a reasonable period of time. City Council member Katie Yaroslavsky told me a story about LA City that was kind of staggering, which is the pendulum has swung so far in the direction of litigation that last year LA City spent $10 million repairing sidewalks and $200 million on settlements for harms that are caused by broken sidewalks. You know that things are out of whack when you have that kind of a ratio. And with respect to e-bikes, again, it's a question of listening to local leaders, local school leaders in particular, to figure out the right balance. I was touring the Hermosa Valley School with Maggie Beauvais-LaMonica several months ago. And that's where I first kind of clapped eyes on the unbelievable kind of the proliferation of e-bikes all over the South Bay. I couldn't, oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
You have 10 seconds.
Oh, I have 10 seconds, okay. So 10 seconds, we can fix this working collaboratively with the local leaders.
We need like a timer. Someone get a timer.
Yeah, if it's possible to see.
I'm going to start with the second question first. You know, we just did Cyclovia up in my area, open streets, and you know, I saw a lot more e-bikes. And when I come down to the South Bay, you know, I'm really jealous of a lot of the infrastructure that's present, with interconnected lanes and the ways in which you're really building it out to be safe. You know, up in my neck of the woods, the most controversial thing you can say is a bike lane, and it's like you've set someone on fire. And it's like, I mean, literally, my whole re-election in 2024 in West Hollywood was like, John Erickson wants to install bike lanes on a street that has like more deaths and fatalities. It's like, really? Like, this is what we're fighting over? And so I'm really jealous when I come down to the South Bay, because I think we can actually get it right and learn from each other on these issues, because interconnectivity and getting people out of cars is reasonable. And I think you all have, and I think one of the, it was either Paul or Sara that said it, about how people use these bikes to get kids to and from school, pick them up, because it's easier than getting into a car. But we need to look at mandating helmets. I heard something about licensure requirements. We need to make sure that we're keeping the next generation and their heads and bodies really safe. Because people do not know what it's like, and I don't think I've ever expected to say the words pop a wheelie, but no one really knows what happens when you're gonna pop a wheelie and you fall backwards, right? And so we really need to make sure that we're looking out for people. And I sound like someone who's like, oh, you know, little whippersnapper, like I know a little bit better than you, but it is true, and we need to look at that. And I've been working with a lot of the street transportation groups like Streets for All and other people who mandate and deal with bikes in this way to look at reasonable solutions up in Sacramento. Secondarily, the question about ADUs and disability claims and everything. Brian was really right when he talked about the example from Katie Yaroslavsky, but that's because the city of LA's streets, trees, and sidewalks are so in disarray that a person walking down the sidewalk knows that if you take a little tumble, the city's going to pay you out more than they actually will to actually fix the issue. That's a problem. That's why in West Hollywood, when you're in West Hollywood, you know when you're down here as well. Investing in streets, infrastructure, and some of you might know when have watched the news, we had a little pipe burst in West Hollywood this past week, are really important. And I intend to run not only large legislation to fix our infrastructure, to avoid these issues with seniors and those that need it. And we need to take care of them as much as possible.
Thank you, John. You get a 1 minute, anything you would like to add?
Oh, okay, that's good to know, and I'm gonna set my own little timer so I don't go over.
Put it here.
Like I did, okay, you can take a look too, all right, and now we can know what we're doing here. As I was saying on the e-bikes, I think this is a useful tool, but there have gotta be, I think, statewide requirements around safety. There are kids who've already died, there have been people who've suffered grievous injuries, families that have lost a loved one. It would be unimaginable to put a 12-year-old on a motorcycle and send him on a regular street, but that's in effect what we're doing with a lot of these e-bikes. And so I think there is a way to strike the right balance, but it involves, building a coalition of a lot of different stakeholders, local leaders, school leaders, and others to figure out what makes sense. And then it also comes down to something else, which is you try a piece of legislation and then you see how it's working. And you go back and you make changes. You don't just build endlessly on this edifice of thousands of laws that Sacramento never reviews or reverses if it's not working.
Thank you, Brian. All right. Again, gonna have one question here. Moderator's privilege for Hermosa Beach, but also the other beach cities, which is that we have an aging pier. We need state support, we need federal support to maintain something that is an icon for Hermosa Beach. It's a draw to the South Bay. I travel internationally. I see advertisements for Los Angeles. It's the Hermosa Beach Pier. We need assistance. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on being able to help not just cities like Hermosa with our aging infrastructure, but other beach cities here in the South Bay, other areas that you're going to represent. How do you think about aging infrastructure?
This is something I literally have been thinking about for the last week. And so we really need to look at how we are investing as a state into the aging infrastructure, working with our beach and coastal commissions and, the agencies that really oversee a lot of these different properties that take a lot of cajoling. I see my dear friend Ray Jackson in the back, and when we deal with our beautiful coast, we want to make sure it's done right? And so ultimately, at the end of the day, I want to run bills and I want to run specific bills that are targeted at improving our infrastructure. And I'm a big supporter of the water taxi proposition out of Malibu that I know would be really beneficial for the Olympics, getting people out of their cars. I've actually met with those individuals and toured, because the Malibu Pier, and by the way, the Venice Pier and many other places are actually old and they're outdated. We want to make sure an emergency never happens, and it's a great travesty doesn't happen. We've been seeing Santa Monica's Pier be really widely used with FIFA and everything coming out, or the new concert series that will be here later in September. And so aging infrastructure is something I've dealt specifically with as a local council member for the last 6 years, and how we invest directly in that. Use statewide dollars. I've gotten over $8 million in grants from the state through some of my local initiatives as a council member to invest in road infrastructure improvements, and that improves everything else. And so we need to, and I think we're really blessed here because the 24th Senate District, and we can say this because we're running for the 24th, it's the most beautiful Senate District, right? When you think of California, of Hollywood, of these areas, you think of this area, right? And let's treat it like that, right? And building that coalition is important because people in Northern California and Central California might not be as bought in, but those tourism dollars and those dollars that actually come into the state are critical for then how we expand and make sure our state's budget is even more healthy if we make this a more welcoming and open place.
Thank you,
I agree with this. I think that what happened in West Hollywood is yet another canary in the coal mine about our failure to invest in our basic infrastructure, not just over the last few years, but over the last 2 generations. We haven't invested sufficiently in our fire infrastructure, in our public safety infrastructure, as well as our roads, bridges, sidewalks, and everything else. The all-purpose Sacramento excuse is, well, we don't have the money. Well, that's just not true. The last Jerry Brown budget, back in the prehistoric days of 7 years ago, was $208 billion. The last Governor Newsom budget is $350 billion. That is a 40% real increase above inflation over the course of 7 years. We have never had more revenue pouring in to Sacramento than we do today. Now, there are all sorts of fixes we need to do on the spending side and the revenue side, but the truth is we have a failure of management and prioritization. Until you get the basics, the fundamentals right, think about those homes and businesses in West Hollywood that were, literally or figuratively blown up by that water main disaster. Nothing else matters to them if the basic water infrastructure isn't in place. That was a 110-year-old pipe that had a projected useful life of 75 to 90 years. It was not supposed to be replaced until 2031. That is a problem. We need to fix our plan, our long-term planning around infrastructure, and we need more legislators up in Sacramento who, when they're asked to jump by the party leadership or the special interests, aren't going to say how high, they're going to say why. They're going to say, are we sure this is the right way to do things? Are we sure these are the right priorities? Because you've got to do two big things simultaneously representing this district, and it's one of the reasons I admire Ben Allen so much. You have to be able to build the big broad coalitions that are necessary to get things done, to build the trust with other legislators. Oh, I thought it was 3 minutes. It's only 2?
2 minutes for initial response and 1 minute.
I am going to
for
figure this
follow-up.
out by the end of the evening.
We'll get it.
Sorry, Brian.
I get a minute.
You have 1 more minute. Yeah.
Great. So that pipe was actually not supposed to be inspected for 5 more years, and it's still blue, right? And that tells you, and as a contract cities president, I know specifically that the cities down here in the South Bay are dealing with the same who owns the infrastructure issue and who's gonna hold the bag when something happens, right? And that is the issue that we're facing. LAD, I forgot about this. A certain supervisor who's endorsed me reminded me that, and I remembered this conversation, that LADWP literally said, yeah, we don't have the money, so we wait for an emergency to happen. And I said, that is the problem, and that is why we look at our infrastructure, your homes, your businesses, your bikes, or your cars, which get washed away, as we all saw. That is the problem. And being contract cities president, having connections at the county and endorsed by forfeits of the Board of Supervisors, including new incoming Senator Maria Elena Durazo, those direct connections to run that legislation up at the county to fix these issues are going to be hyper important. It's not going to get me some sexy headline in the LA Times, but it's the right thing to do for your cities because it keeps you safe and your streets safe and make sure you're getting your water and we're not wasting water because that is one of our most precious, valuable resources right now.
Thank you, John. So just to put a fine point on it, Hermosa Beach can count on both of your guys' support as we address our infrastructure issues.
Yes.
Ray Jackson would kill it.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. It's on the record.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and open it up to the audience. I know you had your hand up in the last one. Hi, Barbara. You're working at it.
Watch out for that announcement.
Hello, line in.
What does it say?
No?
Hello, Lina. Barbara.
Sorry, I think I did this by the night too, right?
I would like to,
It's close.
oh, I would like to address, the housing issue again, SB 9 and 10 and all the subsequent, legislation. What is your impression of the, effect that special interests might have had on all those laws? It seems that it's doing a big favor for speculators, developers, and builders, and not for the people that live in the neighborhoods. So I'd like to know your opinion and see what you think about the effects of special interests in Sacramento.
Thank you, Barbara, for the question. It's a really important one. I think we've been in the middle of a 10-year experiment right now of special interests and people from Northern California blowing up our local zoning and planning to achieve many more affordable and middle-class housing starts. The only problem is that the number of affordable and middle-class housing starts is down, not up. So you have all the blowing up, all the division, all the risk to our environment, to our emergency management, to our neighborhoods and communities, without the benefit of the housing units that we so desperately need. And so this is a significant difference between John and me in this race. I look at each housing bill individually and I ask one question: is it the right bill for the 24th district? When it came to SB 79, I thought it was not the right bill for the district and I publicly opposed it. That doesn't mean I'm against housing. I am for using empty commercial buildings, converting them to residential, which we're already seeing in some cities on the East Coast, used successfully. I am for auditing our publicly held land to figure out how we can build housing, especially for our public servants, our teachers, our police, our firefighters, and our other workers, so that they don't have to drive 2 hours to and from work, so that we don't have these 10% affordable buildings, but we have 50% or even, God forbid, 100% affordable buildings. I also am interested in new technology like manufactured and modular to figure out how we can build quicker and cheaper. But I agree that a lot of these Sacramento bills are the wrong answer, moving us in the wrong direction. And I will stand up and fight for this district when fighting is required, in addition to building the coalitions that are needed to get things done.
So I'm the only one up here who's actually permitted and approved housing. And I gotta let you know, even 100% affordable housing projects themselves face a lot of opposition from neighborhood advocates and other people. And that's why a lot of statewide laws have been passed to ensure that those 100% affordable housing projects actually get built, and infill housing in other ways. All things I'm supportive of. You know, I authored my own city streamlining housing item to essentially remove a lot of bureaucratic load. Specifically, one project was taking 5 years to get shovels in the ground and had 30 affordable housing units, and it was because of all the different meetings and permitting processes that it had to go to. That's horrible, and it was along a commercial corridor, along a transit zone on Santa Monica Boulevard. 5 years, millions of dollars that could have gone back into our local economies. I'm also worried about our next regional housing needs assessment number. I know all of our beach cities and other cities have a really high number, and everyone says we're built out. I completely understand where you're getting that argument, because how are we actually building enough housing? We are now literally holding the bag of decades of lack of wanting to build, and now we are at this horrible route. But Southern California has never had a housing champion in their state, in the caucus that's coming from up here. I will be that person on day one. I will also be the person to help and expand rent control, to demand affordability requirements, to demand and ensure that we have affordability housing overlays. I don't know if you support rent control, I don't know off the top of my head, but specifically ensuring that we do these things are critical, and making sure those are in the laws on day one versus getting yelled at over on the floor. And Senator Allen, God bless his heart, is given bills by Northern California, as Brian is completely right, and says we have the votes, some Republicans most of the time, you can vote for it or you can abstain. And that is ultimately not how we should run policy. On day one, I will be in the room, and I'm actually already in the room because they're asking me how we build and how we do really successful housing policy legislation with local control aspects in it, because I'm still the president of Contract Cities, and our motto is literally strengthening local control.
60 seconds.
I support the rent control we have. I would vote to extend the current Tenant Protections Act that passed and Governor Newsom signed in 2019. That is up for renewal in 2030. I would vote to extend it. I would vote to expand the renter's tax credit. And I would not do anything to mess with the existing rent control arrangements that people have. That said, I'm concerned about blowing up Costa-Hawkins and other aspects of our housing pricing structure as it exists. So that is my position on those issues. I think the number one goal is to build more affordable units, to make sure that the status quo, which is unsustainable, does not continue, that we actually see an uptick in the number of housing starts so that more of our middle-class people and our workers can get into housing that doesn't require them to drive an hour and a half or 2 hours.
A couple of issues. One is the e-bikes.
on the sidewalk, they're motorized. They don't belong on the street, they're not registered. What can we do? Mr. Goldsmith, you brought up the discussion of expenditures in the state. There's something that, I know he's a Republican, but bear with me, something Ronald Reagan said, and I may get the numbers wrong. We're not in a $2 trillion debt because we don't tax enough. We're in a $2 trillion debt because we spend too much. What will you two do to help control the spending in the state?
Is it me first? Yep. Wonderful. So on the e-bike issue, I own an e-bike, right? I don't want them on the sidewalks. I don't think they belong on the sidewalks. It's hard. So in West Hollywood, we're going through this right now with our aging sidewalks. So we have, scooters, robots that deliver your food. They're very nice. They are very nice too. When they walk by, you have e-bikes in every way. But we are trying to utilize the technology of geofencing to not only make it so they cannot be on there. It's not a fine science. I have to let you know it's just not there. But I would love to make sure that those electronic or for-profit companies aren't able to be on there. I've been advocating for that forever, and I think it's really important. On the e-bikes, which are individually bought and can be used by individuals, I want to make sure our sheriff, our police departments have the ability and tools to enforce the laws around the books. I want to mandate, obviously, as I said, helmets and safety mechanisms. Also, it's about education, right? I mean, we all learned how to ride a bike, I think we can all learn how to ride an e-bike safely and successfully. And I do worry about how people are abusing that right and not a privilege. It's kind of like what we say, what did my grandmother say to me? Driving is a right, not a privilege, right? And so, she would always say that to me when she taught me how to drive. And so I think we need to get back into that attitude. You are absolutely right. We are spending out the wazoo. We are spending so much money in Sacramento, to Brian's point about the budget. It is a question of what are we actually spending on. And right now, we're spending on a lot of issues that have come up and boiled up over the last decade or 2 decades, from pension retirement funds to CalPERS to infrastructure disinvestment, and now looking at to how we're protecting an aging class of workers that are retiring, and the serious debt that the state is carrying. And so we really need to look into it. I believe that the previous panel spoke about what bills are on the actual docket that aren't working and spending a lot of money, but how do we make sure that we have really transparent and accountable auditing standards that we look at. And as someone who has to balance a budget as a local council member every year, we need to make sure that our spending is not more and how we invest for a rainy day, something that I did when I retooled our reinvestment strategy in West Hollywood.
Thanks, John.
I agree with John with respect to the e-bike, so everything's been said, not everyone has said it. I agree with his position on that. With respect to the budget, I think this is a significant problem. And, I'm a passionate, mainstream, progressive Democrat, but I also can do math. And I see that the growth of our spending could become unsustainable at a certain point and could crowd out critical priorities like childcare, education. I mean, a lot of districts like this one have had to either cut teachers and other jobs or have had to raise the money privately to fund just the basics of their schools at a time when the state is rolling in dough. And so what is a lean year gonna look like? I'll give you another example. We've spent $24 billion over the last 7 years on homelessness in the state. And I don't think we've really moved the needle, not dramatically enough. We've been managing the problem. We have not really moved with the speed and the seriousness that is required to solve the problem. And there are a lot of examples of programs and policies in other cities in California, other places around the country that have gotten everybody inside. This is an emergency in LA County. We lose 6 people a day who live on the streets. That means 6 deaths every day, and we treat it just like part of the background. We have got to scrutinize and think through our spending to make sure that it is efficient and effective. And there are some look backs that have started in Sacramento where they're holding hearings a year or 2 years later. I would push for that on every significant bill because we've got to treat the taxpayers' money more like our own money.
Right. Anything on 60 seconds?
Oh, I get homelessness, yes. So I've created this, our city's first We Hope Cares program team, which I took and advocated from the state and federal government to have 24/7 behavioral health, mental health crisis response unit, something I want to unlock more for our local cities in across the district, something that some of those funds have been locked up in different budgetary categories. We need to do that. I've actually created a successful program in order to do so. And also interim housing for individuals experiencing homelessness or transitional housing, something that we use with a lot of our grants that we're able to do from the federal and the statewide budget. In a budget deficit year, Senator Allen was still able to get us a lot of that money. Also substance abuse and mental health funding. You know, you can't completely defund substance abuse and mental health and then sit there and go, oh, local cities, it's on you now, right? It's like, okay, when your budgets have no dollars in it, right? And that's the problem with Prop 36. And I understand with Prop 36, you can't literally sit there and take every single dollar from mental health and then sit there and go, hey, local city, now you gotta pay for it, right? It's just impossible. And so, you know, I've, you know, done this and I've advocated and I've created these programs, and this is the type of experience that is actually needed up at the state legislature.
Thank you. And we've got time for one more.
She really wants it.
Go ahead.
I'm
Last
advocating.
one
I don't
for
know.
the night.
She's not one of us. She's
Closing
not going to do a gotcha. She's not going to do Brian a gotcha, I promise.
Uh-oh.
She's not a plant, I swear to God. But she was really happy to ask a question.
Thank you. The one state system that hasn't been mentioned at all tonight, and often isn't mentioned, is the regional centre system that supports families with children with disabilities, like autism, Down syndrome, and adults with the same conditions. And every year as a family, we are asked to go up to Sacramento and talk to the representatives, so obviously you, right? And we're asked to go up to ask for you not to cut a chronically underfunded system. And every year we did it. They didn't cut it. So my first question is, how will you ensure that we get an increase instead of just defending the chronic underfunding? And the second thing is, how can we make all this funding systems more predictable and stable so we don't have to have the same campaigns and fights every single year?
Thank you very much for that question. It is a critical one. I'm married to an educator. I spend a lot of time in schools. I've got 2 school-age children, and I have heard this problem from friends, from family, as well as from a lot of the people across the district that I've met. Number one, we've got to have longer-term budgeting and planning for our school budget. The notion that we have to go through this every year is ridiculous. We should have a 2 or 3 or even a 4-year education budget. I think 4-year makes the most sense because it aligns with the governor's term. The governor, under this new proposal that has passed the legislature, is going to have the primary responsibility, not the superintendent, for state policy with respect to education, with the legislature in a critical role, you know, appropriating the funding, writing the laws, overseeing and holding accountable the administration. And so we need to go to multi-year budgeting. That's number one. Number two, we've got to lobby like crazy with our partners and allies in the federal government for the federal government to meet its responsibilities with respect to special ed, which it has never, ever done. And this is not a red or a blue issue, this is an American issue, because everybody either is in a family or knows very closely a family with a special needs child. And I don't care whether it's a quote-unquote rich privileged school district, like so many of the ones in the 24th district, or a resource deprived school district. Special ed is very expensive, and local districts and local schools cannot be asked to bear the burden on their own. It has got to be a shared responsibility between local, state, and federal, and I would work to build a coalition to get much more of those resources to our schools.
So I'm endorsed by every teaching organization that can endorse in this state, because specifically this was an interview question when they asked us about this, and what are you going to do to increase funding? And I think when we look at the dollars that, and the corporate tax loopholes that the major ones are getting through, and then how they're not actually reinvesting back into our schools. We're seeing a severe, complete disregard for our public education system. And I don't take it to the same issue about the richest school districts and the poorest school districts, but I don't think this is a red or blue issue, because I think it is a Democrat standing up for public education value system here. Republicans are actively, regardless if they'll say it or not, completely systematically defunding the public education system because they want full control over it. That's lockstep and take it home to the thing. And we need as Democrats to stand up, both at the federal government, but also as the fourth largest economy in the world, we need to start acting like it. And we need to make sure those dollars, whether that's Prop 13 reform or split roll reform, these questions that are hypercritical for how we make sure the Disneys, the Amazons, these big corporations are actually paying their fair share for what they should be giving back to public education, are then used and spent specifically in these really critical needs areas. And as someone who has toured multiple schools across this district, this is something that is not only hyper important, but I still see my next door neighbor Terry every day get her special needs daughter onto the bus, and the work that she has to do as an individual parent before she goes to work and then comes back, and the work she takes away from already caregiving for her family as well. And so it is something that we all feel individually and something that we all need to invest in. And it's a priorities issue, right? I don't think we can act as a 2/3 supermajority who likes to sit there and say we support public education and teachers if we don't start acting like it and putting our money where our mouth is. And as a local elected official, a budget is a statement of priorities, and I think the state needs to hold that same category to that same to the same truth.
No disagreement at all about our budget is a reflection of our values, and nothing is more important to our future than K-12 education. But it isn't just about the money. The money is critical, and we do need to raise the base. We do need to fully fund all of the districts in the 24th. But at the same time, Mississippi and Alabama, two of the poorest states in America, are outperforming California in 3rd grade reading and math. It is not just about the money. The money is necessary, but it is insufficient. So I think the status quo on education in California isn't good enough. We used to have a top 10 education system. People would move to this state for our phenomenal public schools. They still move to the South Bay and to Conejo and to other parts of our district for the fabulous public schools. But that is not true anymore statewide, and we've got to make it true again.
We'd love to give you both 1 minute to close. John?
Well, it's so great to be here with you all. I'm down in the South Bay a lot these days. I know Brian said at the picnic the other day, South Bay once a day a week. You know, I find myself driving down La Cienega quite more, and it's kind of like I can just doze off for a second and figure out how I get there. I'm not dozing off in the car though. But this race comes down to really, who do you trust to reflect the values that you want in Sacramento? Do you want someone who's passed courageous, effective legislation locally, who has a 15-year-long track record, who has a budget surplus behind them, who's passed state laws to protect seniors and renters, who's made sure that women's reproductive health has been not only expanded but protected, fought for LGBTQ people, ensured that trans individuals are given the same rights as everyone else during heightened discrimination, ensured that the laws that we have on the books right now are reflective of the California values, and has actively fought against Trump the entire time. This race really comes down to experience and what I can bring to you as an already proven elected official who has a long coalition of individuals who are going to be ready to stand alongside him and fight like hell. That's from congressional members to county supervisors to a lot of the most major validators, teachers, nurses, firefighters, LA County Fire, my fellow friends across this district, and the person who runs the neighborhood watch in a corner somewhere in Santa Monica or in the South Bay. Those are the people I'm going to fight for. I'm going to be honored to earn your vote in November, and I don't know if we're having any more debates at each of these
This will be the last
I'm
one.
sure we're going to have a few more, and I look forward to seeing you all and getting to know you all really well. It's great to be here tonight.
Thanks. You got 80 seconds, so you get 80 seconds.
You get 80 seconds. All right, not 81. That's it. Okay, boom.
Well, thank you all for taking the time. I deeply appreciate it. I think this race comes down to whether we're satisfied with the direction of the state. I think the status quo isn't working. I think what we're doing in Sacramento isn't delivering for enough of our people. And I think sending the same people up to Sacramento to fight for the same things is not going to produce a different or better result. My view is we have a lot of people up in Sacramento with local government experience, and I think that's very valuable. But I also think we should have people up in Sacramento who have had experience with small business, who've had experience asking hard questions to people in power, who've had experience electing Democrats in tough fights against Republicans, not just Democrats winning against other Democrats. I want to go up there and challenge assumptions and build coalitions to get new things done that are going to markedly improve the quality of life here in the South Bay and across this district. I'm also honored to be endorsed by a lot of unions. IATSE and the Teamsters, the two most important entertainment unions, have united behind me. LA Police, CAL FIRE, tons of elected officials. If you go to my website, you'll see lots of validators and endorsers as well. But that's not what this comes down to. What this comes down to is who's going to fight for change.
Thank you, Brian. With that, after many months here in the beach cities, we are bringing our candidate forums to a close. We will have
One more.
As Ann said, we will have an endorsement meeting in August, but I just want to say thank you for spending so much of your time here and over the last couple of months here in the South Bay, here in the beach cities, listening to our residents' concerns. I hope that we all feel that regardless of who is elected of the two of you and of our assembly candidates, that we have a fighter for the beach cities in Sacramento. So let's give them a warm round of applause. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you both. It doesn't need to leave because there's still a lot of snacks and food and the coffee. Sorry that it was late, we had a little emergency. I would like to I know it's hard. It's been a long night, but if you could just give your attention.
That's the last one.